I want to wrap up here. Thank you guys for sticking around. And I want to make sure that we have time to go over the homework and review. Those of you who haven't yet, please, there's a poll that we've asked requesting you to let us know how we did, and also inviting you to join some of the bonus and info sessions that we're doing. Your homework, as we discussed, this is a class after all, is to create an image for a blog post using Canva or Midjourney. There is potentially a small price to get the advanced version of Canva or the $20 a month version of Midjourney. So this isn't something you can necessarily do with free tools, but if you want to use.
So note on that, Jessica said that she has the free version of Canva and it worked in there.
Okay, so there you go. So using Canva, the free version, and there is a Midjourney version that's free as well. It's limited, and often you're going to get reported back to you that they're not able to actually service you because they're servicing their paid clients first. So let's wrap up. First, I want to review what we've covered in this nearly 2-hour session. First, we talked about your homework. Your homework for this past week was to write a sales email. Many of you shared some of the stories of how you wrote that sales email. You might recall in session 1 that we spoke to Brett Spodak, who actually used it to write personalized sales emails that were much more effective because they scraped publicly available information about mission and focus, and then wrote a personalized introductory paragraph, which is always the key. I also got a sales email this week where it said, "Dear Dan Gretsch, I spoke to your colleague Dan Gretsch, and he suggested you might be interested in hearing from me." And then it said at the bottom, "This is Sales GPT," in an AI generated email, and it was just really annoying. And so then they wrote me back the next day and said, "Dear Dan Gretsch, I'm sorry I used both your first and last name in the email. I should have just said Dear Dan." And then it said, "I spoke to your colleague Dan Gretsch," and he said, so it's just like, come on, man. Like, that is so offensive and insulting. So I had ChatGPT write an offensive email back to them, and then I sent that and made sure they knew it was written by ChatGPT. We talked about Loeb, and Loeb is the stand-in for the Frankenstein weird hands, weird eyes, aged Nicole images that with crow's feet that she doesn't have, that these AI generators are creating. My little buddy with the small giant with his funky thumb and all the other things that AI is doing right now that kind of have us land in that uncanny valley, that space where we feel just profoundly uncomfortable with what we're seeing. Now, as we cross that chasm out of the uncanny valley, we're starting to get into the world of deep fakes. And this is a scary place to be because, Russian hackers and scam artists are going to begin using these tools, and already are using these tools, to completely fake us out. And I mean, even in presidential elections, there have been deep fakes that have influenced debate and changed people's points of view. So this is a real issue, and it's going to become more and more of an issue as these tools get better and better. And that when people are sounding the alarm bells, deep fakes is one of the big alarm bells, is that the better that generative AI gets at faking reality, the scarier it's going to become. And we're going to be able to make the Pope look like he's in a puffer jacket, and we won't know that it was generative AI that created that, and we won't know that it wasn't real, because most of us right now experience reality mediated through media. And so we're going to be in this kind of crazy fact-checking place where we're constantly trying to check facts on imagery. Imagery has largely been a space that was fact-check free, and we're going to have to develop whole new tools and whole new disciplines and whole new companies to check that this is actually a real picture. We talked about the state of AI for images and how generative AI for images works. We pointed out that it's very, very similar to the kind of learning algorithms that we saw with text, that you can basically feed it a bunch of images and outputs, and then it analyzes the imagery, and then it outputs images that are similar to that. And that these tools are already quite advanced when it comes to non-generative AI, just normal artificial intelligence, to help establish and understand things in medical settings. and other settings. What's really happening now is generative AI, where we're creating new imagery, is advancing very rapidly. The AI or not AI shows that we went from a world where images were flawed to now they're too perfect. And that famous supermodel Cindy Crawford, who had the mole on one of her above one of her lips. If you take that mole away, she's less beautiful. And so part of what makes beauty, human and otherwise, is asymmetry. And too symmetrical is actually a little jarring, is a little uncanny. And AI is going to learn that too. So you'll start to see imperfect images created by AI, not because it's failing, but because it's doing it intentionally. And then Olivier showed how with some very talented graphic designers and a little bit of touching up and tweaking in Photoshop, he's been able to save tens of thousands of dollars for his client and do photo shoots that would not have been possible if not for AI, because both his budget was too small and the time before the event was too small for them to be able to do it the typical and the old-fashioned way. And his tactical advice is really more than anything to be a cyborg, to be someone who's trained on these tools and understands them and how to use them effectively, to try not to use this for subtle emotions, and to really partner with not only AI, but someone with a graphical bent, whether that's you or someone on your team. I know in my company, I'm very text oriented, and we struggle therefore with generative AI for images. And that's kind of a little bit of a gap that's emerging on our team. And that we saw the most popular and what, at least for now, we would say is the best of the big three in generative AI, which is Midjourney. You have to use a Discord, which is another software to access Midjourney. I don't understand the technical reason behind that, but so you have to first get into Discord and then use Midjourney. But I was able to figure it out within about 10 minutes. I'm pretty technically savvy, so it is discoverable. And then we're going to also share in our resources in the chat and next week tutorials on how to get into Discord and then how to get started with Midjourney. And for me, when I tried to use Midjourney on the free level, it said there was no server, so I had to pay for the $20 a month campaign, and now I was able to use the tool, and it worked really well, and it was really fun, except for the little kid's thumb. And then we talked about Canva. Canva is kind of, I would say, your gateway drug, if you will, to this tool. Most of us are using Canva, and we love it. And there's just tucked away in the apps menu is the way to use generative AI. So you might as well get started with that as part of your homework and start using an image for a blog or to embed it in an email. And so with that, I want to say thank you. Olivier, we like to go through the ahas. What kind of stood out for you from a learning perspective? And then I'll ask Nicole the same question. What did you learn today in being part of today's session about AI for images that you can take home with your team?
Oh, actually, there are some slides that you did that are really good at the start to explain and the difference between DALL-E, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and the way it's built, and the fact that that the system it used to analyze images is the system it used to generate images. So try to use the filter the other way, and you understand why some mistake happens. And that for me is a big aha, and I thank you very much, because it's really great. I learned stuff during your presentation.
Thank you for that. Nicole?
This week, I mean, it reinforced for me the importance of having a variety of inputs, like different cultures, different races, ethnicities. I mean, we need everyone who is not a white male to do more inputs, do more visual inputs, just putting in pictures of what you look like, what your friends look like, so that we can have more diverse outputs, or even requesting the outputs to look more like you. Yeah, it's so important. It's so important to get all of those cultural inputs and outputs.
And I don't think it's an accident that it gave you crow's feet around your eyes that were not appropriate. You know what I mean? Like that is probably in part because it wasn't trained properly. And so it's so important the work that you're doing, Nicole, to help kind of bring sort of at least more gender diversity into this field. I thought it was actually really telling when, for me, my biggest aha was actually one of the last things we saw, which is when Jeff shared the image of his wife, who is a data scientist, and how basically AI is biased about their opinion being that data scientists are men, and that they were given an image of a data scientist and they couldn't interpret it as such. And that is a big part of what we're trying to say here is every image and every piece of text that is produced by AI is biased by definition, by the data on which it was trained. And you have a responsibility as a business leader to understand on what data that specific tool was trained so that you can at least know what the biases may be. So ChatGPT was trained on the internet circa 2021, everything on the internet before 2021, nothing more recent. So number one, it's not going to be very good at current events. But even more importantly, number two, the internet is a reflection of the structural biases in our society, whether those be socioeconomic or gender or race or ethnicity or country of origin, right? Rich countries tend to produce more content. Rich people tend to produce more content. And so the training is happening on content that has some of the same structural biases as the world as a whole. And we're going to continue to hit this theme every week as we go, because it is essential for you to be able to use this tool effectively to understand, what are the biases of AI, and so you can at least be aware of them and hopefully mitigate them. I wanted to share this parting thought, and this is an ode to the Small Giants community. The Small Giant community is all about being great rather than big, and this is an ode to the small giant in all of us. It's a poem by Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Who are you not to be? So go out there, be your brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous selves. And thank you. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Mike and Jonathan. Really appreciate you. And thanks to the several hundred of you who stuck around to the end. We appreciate you guys. You're troopers, nearly 2 hours with us. And here you still are.